In today's video, I will go through and change the primer bulb and cleanliness, maintenance-wise, of the saw. So greasing bearings and making it all nice and tickety-boo, basically. Run her up and see how she goes. In regards to all the tools that we need today, we have long nose pliers, obviously with the primer bulb that we're going to replace. We've got a small little screwdriver, the T-handle that comes with the saw. So you've got the flathead, or this one's actually a steel one, which is a 13mm socket and also a 15 on the other end. Trusty old bearing grease. The Husky one does an absolute dream. There are obviously other brands and makes out there, but I just find that the Husqvarna bearing grease does the absolute wonders on it. Obviously the Torx 27 for sort of the side bolts, and because I haven't got an impact wrench, I've got two 13mm sockets to take the clutch off. So with the saw itself, like I said, I've got a 10-inch carving bar on there. I've got a wrap on the handle with which is, yeah, so it's seen better days but still does the trick. I've changed the fuel and oil caps to the flip caps, the Husky ones. Obviously I've got the Panther dogs on there as well. I've changed the pull start, so you've got a steel Elasostart on there, and the culprit of today, as you can see, I thought I'd change the primer bulb to a different colour, but yeah, it didn't actually work. I mean, it works, but I'm just not really a fan of having white tape and super glue keeping it all together, so that's why we're changing it today. So taking off the air filter cover, nice little flathead, down on, you see the orange clip there, basically prise it open. This cap comes off, and as you can see, it's not necessarily that bad in there, to be fair. I mean, the air filter could do with a little bit of a brush off, but inside the carb itself, it's actually not too bad. But this is where you get the Torx 27. You've got two bolts on the side of the carb, of the throat of itself. So obviously you undo that one and the other one. Also to keep in mind the fact that you have a fixed fuel line that sticks onto the actual handle itself. So having a sort of like a stopper for the fuel, which is ideal, so you don't get fuel everywhere. What I am going to do is get a small little cloth, so I can sort of, actually no, I'm gonna do it. So in my little pot of goodies up on the top, I should have a little bung. There he is. So this is what I use for sort of plug-in fuel lines, bits and pieces like that. This is what I said, you need a long nose pliers, so you can literally hold it like that and bung it. These are sort of the shelf holders for sort of anything from IKEA, basically. They're absolutely brilliant for fuel lines and bits and pieces like that. So anything that comes off, so you've got the actual sleeve itself with the two bolts that sort of retain the carb in place. Once they are off, you do have your fuel line that comes from your primer bulb up in the top left hand corner, which goes round a pin, which keeps it out of the way of the throttle, which you can probably see there. So the throttle on that side, and then you've got a throttle on this side as well. So if I do that. So you could probably just make it out. So you've got the pin at the top, which goes around, and then in between the casing and the pin, you've got the fuel line that comes from the primer bulb on the side. So once you've got those two bolts off, the main fuel line going into the carb is in the top right hand corner, just behind the actual throttle pin itself that comes from the top of the handle. So you'll have the throttle pin coming down. You've got the choke there, which you don't need to do, basically, because it's pinched in between side casing here and that casing on the right there. So what I'm going to do is get my little bung and pull the carb out. And it should just pull straight out. And then you get your bung, my little shelf retainer, and then while it's there, pop that one straight in, just like that. So now you've got no fuel leaking about. You can then take off the fuel line from the primer bulb, which is in the top left, and then it should just slide straight out, basically. So there's your carburetor for the CS2511. Get my my tuning tool. No sponsors in this video, but West Coast Saws, thank you very much. Is try and get this primer bulb out. You do have, so obviously with that one in there, it's quite hard to see. So you've got two sort of fixings each side, and then you've got one tube which is longer than the other. Obviously when you detach one side, then it should just pull straight out, basically. But obviously, just bearing in mind, you still have fuel in the primer bulb itself. So I tend to push one side of the primer bulb, and then it should just pull straight out. So as you can see from there, there's the trusty electrical tape and super glued. So what I'm going to do is just get my long nose pliers in there. I don't want to pull the fuel line from the carb itself. And there is the primer bulb, which I want to replace. So the main fuel line that goes in is for the tall one, and then the line from the primer bulb to the carburetor is the short one, as you can see there. So what I'm going to do is pop the fuel line that goes from the primer bulb to the carburetor onto the short side. Make sure it's on there nice and snug, so don't pinch the fuel line too much, but you can just pinch it and slide it on nicely. Coming from sort of the outside, I will thread, let's pull that start and push him out the way a little bit. I will thread the tube through, because otherwise it can be an absolute nightmare as soon as you've put the fuel line from the tank itself onto the primer bulb, and then you won't be able to get the fuel line in, basically. So this is quite fiddly. Now once I've done that, you will see that you have alignments for the two teeth on the side of the primer bulb. So where I said the two teeth, so the two teeth that sit on the outside, you will have grooves where it sits in. So make sure it's lined up nicely, and then just basically push it in, and it should. There we go. So he's all lined up and it clicks in nicely. So that tube there, just basically wrap it round that pin at the top so it sits out the way. So instead of a red one, it's a nice little clear one now, brand new. So now I can pop the carb back on. Now I've got everything sort of where I want it. I've cleaned up the carburetor, so making sure that you close the choke or open the choke, so but obviously the throat of the carburetor is all sort of closed. I do put my thumb and finger, so then I can sort of basically get my old little trusty old toothbrush. I don't brush my teeth with this, even though probably my missus sort of would wish that I did. But when it comes to just literally any nooks, crevices, nooks and crannies, etc., etc., is all nice and clean, basically. So when we put it back together, obviously making sure that the choke is set. So I'm just going to reset that. So then that is all back out. Don't forget to take off the bung. And so what I'm going to do is pop the line from the primer bulb onto the carburetor, so that can sit there. Take out my bung. There will be a little bit of fuel that comes out, but I will try and do this nice and slowly. So there's no fuel that leaks everywhere. Give it a little bit of a wiggle because he is in there quite tight. There goes a little bit of fuel, but I'm not really fussed about that, to be quite honest with you. So when it comes to fuel line for the carburetor at the top, on off, pop the throttle on first, so it goes up, through, and then twists round. Pop in the primer bulb line that goes to the carb back on, the tube over the pin at the top, and then everything sits nicely. So that's that. Now that I can put the sort of the retainer for the air filter back on, to be quite honest, it doesn't really matter which way you put this. It's just personal preference. It doesn't really matter. They're exactly the same, top and bottom. Because of the way that the filter goes on, it clicks on anyway, and they're identical. So this is practically not even a 6-month-old saw. I try to maintain it the best I can, and carry on with it, basically. I mean, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So now they're never ever wrench these up, just nip them tight. It's like a spark plug, basically. You never ever wrench a spark plug up because obviously of the seal ring, and then the air filter just clicks on nicely. So now that we've done the primer bulb, we've cleaned around the carb, we've cleaned the air filter, that cap can now go back on. So once everything's back on and nicely done, just make sure that the primer bulb works nicely. Lovely. With regards to taking off the clutch cover, or sort of the side casing, or whatever you want to call it, always make sure that the chain brake is off. Only because some saws have internal chain brakes. So for example, Steels, they potentially like to have an internal chain brake, but with the Echoes, these are external, exactly the same as the Husqvarna ones. So obviously make sure your chain brake's off. 13mm socket. This might be quite tight. That is not too bad. So a couple of turns off, and what I tend to do is with the chain tensioner, cool, it's a bit of a tongue twister, isn't it? Is literally just a half turn. You can see the nose, you can sort of drop it just slightly, so you know that chain is a little bit slack. It's just a lot easier to take off some people like to not even touch the chain tensioner and take it off as it is. But yeah, I mean, cleanliness, it's not exactly brilliant. I mean, this one has had a bit of a battering over the last month or so. So yeah, I'm just gonna whiz through and clean all of the excess sawdust. By the looks of that, I might have to turn down my oiler as well, because there's a lot of sawdust and it's still quite wet. So I'm going to turn down my oiler at the same time. And it's always a good indicator as well. So when you go through certain things and you look at aspects of taking your saw apart, it's always a good sign to say, right, okay, yeah, that's doing its job, that's doing that. But when it comes to your oiler, you can never know how much is too much or not enough. But I would say that when you've got a consistent 1 tank of fuel to 1 tank of oil, that's probably bang on, to be quite honest. When I'm running sort of my carving bar, I do tend to have my oil slightly a little bit too high, only because there's no sprocket on the end. It's just literally guiding over. And also with the chain being a little bit slacker as well. As you can see, there's no sprocket on there. So with the chain oil, it has to go round and sort of lubricate the chain, make sure it's all doing its job. I mean, for me, the chain, there's no spurs on there because I have it quite slack anyway. But what I'm going to do is clean the bar, go through and take off any debris that's inside there, check all the way through it. If there is any sort of spurs in regards to the bar, there's a few bits on the end. Let's get a flat file and dress those up nicely. Clear all the oil sort of feeds to the bar itself. Clean the side casing and also clean inside the saw itself. So while I do that, I'm going to stop. While I was cleaning the side casing, now it's a little bit sparkly. It's just making sure that the contact for the chain brake is all nice and clean. The contact with the bar on the actual sort of bushing on the left hand side there is all nice and free of debris. I actually changed the chain catcher, so but I've actually got a few sort of rubber rings basically. I thought I'd change it. It looks quite nice. I quite like that. So going back to sort of the cleanliness of these, it is quite annoying that I have to keep my lanyard on there, but when it comes to the cleanliness around, I tend to take off the clutch, the actual clutch bed itself, and the bearing before I clean it. And the reason why I'm behind that is so I can get access to behind it, clean everything in regards to the clutch bell, and clean all of the clutch as well. Make sure that everything is how it should be. There's no cracks, there's no breaks, there's no chips, etc, etc. And for me personally, I do it one way. Certain people do it differently, and this is where the two 13mm sockets come in hand. Obviously, making sure that the way that you take them off is the right way. So when you put it onto the clutch itself, obviously everyone goes lefty loosey, righty tighty. But actually, to take the clutch off, you've got to go in reverse because it's reverse thread. So what I'm going to do is take off the pull start casing. And doing this, basically you lock one side and loosen off the other. And it's quite handy that the fact that you kind of work it both ways. But to be quite honest, it could go either way. The flywheel will come off or the clutch will come off. And I'm hoping the clutch comes off. But yeah, it's quite nice and easy. obviously you put a socket on one side and socket on the other, and then just basically do the reverse thread. What I would say is you would probably need a small extension for the flywheel side. So what I'm going to do is pop an extension on one of the sockets, so then you can actually have full rein when it's in there, and I'll show you now quickly. So once you take that off, God, I need to clean that. So this is where I said that you would need the extension, because when you actually put, might even actually work going through the handle, you know. So when you actually put the socket on, it locks off, and then when you come around to this side, it will be okay to put that on there. So like I said, do it onto tighten on this side, and then you kind of get the figure in regards to which way you're doing it. So what I tend to do is put the socket, if I spin this around, put the socket in between the handle, so it locks it off. You can then put your hand over the top of that so it doesn't come up, and then you can do what you need to do on this side. So what I tend to do is pop it on that way, and then I can push away from me, and then this side, like I said, I pop it on there and then lock it off at the handle, which is nice and easy to say. So give that one a little bit of a bash, and then it should come straight off. And that is how I take a clutch cover off on my Echo. So 213 mils, and then just don't forget to tighten it, because, and plus, when you take the clutch cover off, you'll see the direction where it says off at the top. You have an arrow on regards to which way it comes off. Just don't forget to do it that way. So what I'm going to do is just brush off all of the excess sawdust and gunk and everything like that. Have a look in regards to if there's any cracks, breaks, chips, etc. on the clutch itself. Clutch looks pretty good condition, to be fair, considering it's been used and abused. Yeah, there's no breaks, there's no cracks, there's nothing on there, which is brilliant. So I'm just going to pop that one to one side, taking off the ring. Normally you should see the lines there, so that will go next to the clutch on that way when it goes back on. So obviously making sure that the lines are facing outwards, and then you can literally take off the clutch bell itself. As you can see, it's a quarter. What I'm going to do is just grab my cloth, clean the outside. I don't actually use anything contact wise on this bit, only because of where it is and what it supports, and what it's in contact with. So all I do is just literally rub it off, any excess, just basically clear it off. But yeah, the sprocket looks good. There's no cracks, anything in there. A little bit of gunk there, just clear that out with a bit of toothbrush. And then the inside of it is more important. So when it comes to cleaning it all out, making sure when you come to your big saws and stuff, there'll probably be a build up of sort of crap, gunk, anything in there. But yeah, I just give it a bit of a wipe over, and as you can see, it comes out nice and clean. And this is the old trusty bearing, and this is the one that what I'm going to do today is grease it up with, like I said at the start, the Husqvarna bearing grease, which I've got here, and then pop it back on, put it all back together. So what I'm going to do now is just literally take this off and clean it all up, make sure that everything is working as it should. I mean, some of the times I do take off sort of the oil drive and make sure that there's nothing in behind that, which I might do that sort of after I've cleaned it, because I don't want any of this, as you can see, sort of just scraping it away, any of this coming into contact with anything behind there. So what I'm going to do is just basically clean all of this and then see what's behind it, and if there is anything behind it, clean it out and put it all back together. But because obviously of all of the stuff that's inside it, they do sort of, because it's sort of put through with oil and the sawdust, when it sort of clogs up, it does stop, and it does go quite hard as well when it hasn't been used for a while. So when it gets to a point where you haven't used your saw or anything for a while, just make sure that if you know you're not going to use it, clean it, because it does go quite hard, and obviously all of the oil and sawdust and everything, because there's moisture in there, it does corrode it. Some people will say no, it won't, because the oil is oil based and stuff like that, but when you've kind of got sawdust in contact with water, it holds it. So even a tree, now that I've given that a little bit of a clean and taken off the oil drive, is going anti-clockwise. So you'll have two little teeth. Anti-clockwise, it will twist and then it come off. Having a look at that, there's nothing in there, which is pretty good. So all I'm going to do is just pop it back on and then do it clockwise. You won't be able to over tighten it, it's just basically an oil drive that clicks into it. So now all I'm going to do is pop that on reverse, all back together. So let's grease up this bearing with the bearing grease that I've got. Excuse the noise, I'm currently in my garage, so the road noise is people leaving their house. So you don't want loads, I'd probably say like a pea size. I mean, one of these pots doesn't cost a lot, but it goes a long way. So one of those, if you live in the UK like I do, I get all of the parts for my saws and stuff like that, so replacement parts, all from LNS Engineering. Now I've greased that bearing up, what I'm going to do is just pop that onto one side. So any excess that you actually have on your finger, just literally run it around the end of the crank, so it gives a little bit of lubrication for when it goes on. Any excess, get off with the cloth. So now that I've greased that up, I can pop that one back on. Some of the times it's popping, I mean, I've got a sort of a seat and everything, but if you do have a vise, pop in the handle in the vise, and then you can obviously flip it up, turn it around, however, sort of adjust it to however you want it. Now that I've got the bearing on, I'm just going to pop the clutch bell on, making sure that you'll see the two teeth on the side go into the teeth, the actual sprocket itself, so you don't sort of basically misjudge and over tighten it, and the oil or the oil drive doesn't oil properly. So remember when I said about the washer, the marks on the outside always go facing outwards. Don't know if you can see that. There you go. So it faces outwards. Then the clutch always has the off and the nut on the outside. So you never ever put the clutch on that way. You always have it that way. So you could probably see, if I turn that, so you can see the off on all three with the arrow as well. So that's basically how you put it on. So when you put it on, you always do anti-clockwise to put it on. And that is how I change and maintain my saw. So after battling with the saw, putting it in the vise and then taking out the, oh, my light's just gone, taking out the spark plug. So with the yellowy colour, it's actually running quite nicely. So I'm going to pop that one back in. I'm going to give it a bit of a wire brush, which I've got up here, clean any debris off. Because it is quite a relatively new spark plug, there's no need to change it. But if you do need a new spark plug, obviously if it's secondhand saw that you've got, and you do need a new spark plug, CMR7H is the spark plug for it. This one was absolutely wrenched in there, so I may have to get a new spark plug and just nip it up, because that was just way too tight, way too tight for my liking anyway. So after I've cleaned that one up, I'm just going to pop it back in and then fire her up. Now that we've done the spark plug, what I'm going to do is just literally fire her up. So because it's got a new prime bubble, I'm just going to prime it once, pop the choke on. She's fired up, pull the trigger and the choke goes off. That smells lovely. Love a two-stroke smell. Love it. So that is how I maintain my Echo CS2511T. If you'd like the video, obviously click that like button. If you would like to see more videos, please just comment what you'd like to see. I've got my ground saw, so I've got a Stihl MS362C, which I'm going to do next. That will be in a separate video, so if you want to see that, click on that, and then we can run through. It's basically exactly the same, if I'm honest. But there is one thing, the oiler. I'm going to turn that one down slightly, only a touch, only because I can see the debris of oil. So yeah, only a touch, because obviously the carving bar, there's no sprocket on there. But that starts, smells, spark plug, looks good, it's all clean, air filter clean, new prime bubble on there, and that is all ready to go. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay sharp.